The holographic message appeared in every human settlement across 17 star systems at exactly the same moment. Admiral Jack Morrison watched it materialize in the command center of Earth's orbital defense station, his weathered face showing no emotion as the alien figure took shape before him. High Chancellor Zexthor of the Varathian Empire stood nearly 8 feet tall, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the light in shimmering patterns of blue and gold. His 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern on his elongated face, stared directly into the camera with an expression that humans had learned to recognize as contempt. The Chancellor's voice came through in perfect English, translated by technology that had existed long before humans discovered fire. His words were calm, measured, and absolutely final. Humanity, you have expanded too quickly. You have built weapons too powerful. You have refused to accept the natural order of this galaxy. The Galactic Council, representing 43 civilized species, has reached a unanimous decision regarding your species. Morrison felt the tension in the command center rise. Around him, dozens of officers sat frozen at their stations, listening to words that would change everything. You will submit to Council oversight immediately. You will reduce your military fleet by 70% within 90 days. You will abandon all colonies established in the last 5 years. And you will broadcast a formal apology for your aggressive behavior, along with a plea for mercy from the Council. The hologram paused, and Zexthor leaned forward slightly. You have 72 hours to broadcast your compliance. If we do not receive your message of submission and your plea for mercy within that time, the Council will mobilize its armada. We will come to your worlds and we will teach you the price of defiance. The message ended. The hologram disappeared. For a long moment, nobody in the command center moved. Morrison turned to his communications officer. Get me President Martinez now. Halfway across the solar system, Ambassador Lyra Quinn sat in her small apartment on the Council's diplomatic station, staring at the same message on her personal screen. She had watched it 3 times already, and each time, she felt her stomach twist into tighter knots. She knew this was coming. She had spent 5 years as Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, and she had seen the warning signs. The Council members had grown more hostile in recent meetings. They whispered in corridors when she passed. They questioned every human action, every new colony, every ship that left human space. But she had hoped, desperately hoped, that diplomacy could prevent this moment. Her communication console beeped. A message from Earth marked urgent and encrypted. She opened it with shaking hands. Ambassador Quinn, return to Earth immediately. Do not respond to any Council communications. Leave within the hour. This is not a request. It was signed by President Elena Martinez herself. Quinn grabbed her emergency bag, the one every human diplomat kept packed for exactly this kind of situation, and headed for the docking bay. As she walked through the station's corridors, she passed aliens from a dozen different species. Some stared at her with what looked like pity. Others turned away, as if they couldn't bear to look at someone from a species that had just been sentenced to destruction. In a research facility deep beneath the surface of Luna, Earth's moon, Dr. Marcus Cole was already working. He had received the alert 15 seconds before the public broadcast, thanks to his security clearance. Those 15 seconds had been enough. Cole was a thin man in his 50s with gray hair and eyes that seemed permanently tired. He had been the chief scientist of the Human Defense Initiative for 12 years, and he had spent every single one of those years preparing for this exact scenario. His fingers flew across holographic keyboards, activating systems that had been dormant for years. Status reports flooded his screens. Green lights began appearing across his displays one after another like stars coming out at dusk. Project Horizon is active, he said to the empty room. All relay stations responding. The network is live, nobody answered. Nobody needed to. Cole had been practicing those words in his mind for over a decade. 6 hours after the ultimatum, President Elena Martinez sat in the Situation Room beneath the Capitol building in New Geneva. The room was packed with military officers, government officials, and advisors. Everyone wanted to know what Earth's response would be. Martinez was 62 years old, a former diplomat who had spent 30 years navigating the dangerous waters of galactic politics before becoming president. She had seen war. She had seen peace. She had seen species rise and fall. And she had learned something that most humans never understood. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you could do was nothing at all. Madam President, said General Paul Harris, the head of Earth's military forces, we need to respond. We need to tell them something. Even if it's a refusal, we need to answer. Martinez shook her head slowly. No. The room erupted into confused voices. Admiral Morrison, who had joined the meeting via holographic link from the orbital station, held up a hand for silence. Explain, he said to Martinez. Martinez stood and walked to the large display screen that showed a map of human and council space. I've studied every first contact, every war, every negotiation in council history. Do you know what I found? Nobody answered. Species that beg for mercy never get it. They become vassals at best, extinct at worst. Species that threaten the council get crushed by overwhelming force. But there's never been a species that simply stayed silent. That's because staying silent is suicide, said Harris. They'll see it as contempt. They'll attack for sure. Maybe, Martinez said. Or maybe they'll see it as something they don't understand. And what people don't understand, they fear. She turned to face the room. The council expects us to beg. They're prepared for us to beg. They have protocols for species that beg. They also expect we might refuse and threaten war. They have protocols for that too. But they have no protocol for silence. They have no experience with a species that simply ignores them. And that uncertainty will eat at them. It will make them doubt. It will make them question what we know that they don't. Morrison leaned back in his chair, a slight smile crossing his face. You want to use their own psychology against them? Exactly. The Varathians have ruled the council for 12,000 years because they understand fear. They've built their entire power structure on it. So let's give them something to fear. Let's make them imagine what humanity might be capable of. And if it doesn't work? Asked Harris. If they attack anyway? Martinez looked at Morrison. The Admiral nodded slightly. Then we fight, Martinez said. But we fight with every advantage we've been quietly building for the last 20 years. Dr. Cole, status on Project Horizon. Cole's face appeared on one of the screens. Fully operational, Madam President. All systems green. Good. Keep it active but quiet. Admiral Morrison, your fleet? Ready, ma'am. But I have to ask, how do we explain this to our people? They're going to panic when we don't respond. We tell them the truth, Martinez said. We tell them that humanity doesn't beg. We tell them that we're not going to respond because we don't recognize the Council's authority over us. We tell them to trust their government and their military. And we tell them to go about their lives as normal. As normal? Harris looked incredulous. While the largest military force in the galaxy prepares to attack us? Especially while they prepare to attack us. If our people panic, if we look desperate, it undermines everything. But if we stay calm, if we act like we're not worried at all, it sends a message to the Council. It says we know something they don't. It says we're ready for whatever they bring. The room fell silent as everyone processed this strategy. It was audacious. It was risky. It was completely unprecedented. It was also brilliant. All in favor? Martinez asked one by one. Hands went up. Even Harris, though reluctantly, raised his hand. It's decided then. Earth will not respond to the Council's ultimatum. We will maintain complete radio silence on all official channels. No statements, no threats, no negotiations. Let the galaxy wonder what humanity is thinking. When Ambassador Quinn arrived back on Earth 20 hours later, she went straight to the presidential residence. Martinez met her in a private office, away from advisors and guards. You're keeping silent, Quinn said. It wasn't a question. Yes, they'll see it as an insult. Zexthor will demand blood. Let him demand. Quinn sat down heavily. I've spent 5 years building relationships with council members. I've made friends. I've earned trust. This will destroy all of that. Martinez sat across from her. Lyra, I know what I'm asking you to sacrifice. But those relationships were always conditional. They were based on the Council believing humanity would eventually submit to their authority. We're not going to submit, so those relationships were going to end anyway. You're gambling with billions of lives. I'm gambling that the Council will blink first. That their fear of the unknown will outweigh their pride. And I'm betting on the fact that humanity has prepared for this day far better than they realize. Quinn looked at the president for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? I need you to stay visible. Attend public events. Look confident. Show the Council that we're not hiding, we're not afraid. Let them see that Earth's... The 72 hours passed in silence. On Varathis Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Council, High Chancellor Zexthor stood in the Great Chamber, where 43 species gathered to govern the known galaxy. The chamber was in chaos. They said nothing. The voice belonged to Ambassador Krell, a representative from the Silicate Commune. His rocky form shifted with agitation. Not a word, not a message, nothing. Perhaps they did not receive the transmission, suggested Ambassador Yara of the Aquarian Federation, her blue skin shimmering under the chamber lights. They received it, Zexthor said coldly. We have confirmation from monitoring stations. The message reached every human settlement. They heard us, then why no response? Krell demanded. In 12,000 years of Council history, no species has ever simply ignored an ultimatum. It's unprecedented. Zexthor's 4 eyes narrowed. It's an insult. The humans are showing contempt for this Council's authority. Or, said a quiet voice from the back, they're showing something else entirely. The speaker was Ambassador Thane from the Whisper Collective, a species known for their strategic thinking. Perhaps we should ask ourselves why a species would choose silence when faced with destruction. Because they're fools, Zexthor snapped. Are they? Thane moved forward. Humans have colonized 17 star systems in less than a century. They've developed technology that rivals some of our oldest species. They've shown remarkable innovation and adaptability. Do these sound like the actions of fools? The chamber fell quiet. Several ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. What are you suggesting? Zexthor asked. I'm suggesting that perhaps their silence means they're not afraid. And if they're not afraid, we should ask ourselves why. On Earth, President Martinez sat in her office reading reports from across human space. The reports all said the same thing. Life was continuing normally. Markets were stable. No panic, no riots. People were going to work, raising families, living their lives. It was exactly what she had asked for, but it still surprised her. Humans were capable of remarkable calm when they needed to be. Ambassador Quinn entered the office. The council is confused, she reported. I have contacts who are sending me messages. They want to know why we're not responding. What are you telling them? Nothing. Just like you instructed. But Madam President, some of them sound genuinely worried. They expected anger or fear. Our silence is making them nervous. Martinez allowed herself a small smile. Good, let them be nervous. Every hour that passes with no response from us is another hour they spend questioning their own assumptions. Zexthor is calling for an immediate military mobilization. Of course he is. But will the other council members support him? That's the real question. Quinn nodded slowly. I've been watching the voting patterns. The Silicate Commune is hesitant. The Aquarian Federation is worried about economic disruption. Several smaller species are questioning whether attacking us is really necessary when we haven't actually attacked anyone. The Council's unity is already starting to crack, Martinez observed. Our silence is forcing them to confront their own doubts. When people are afraid, they look for certainty. When they can't find it, they turn on each other. In orbit above Earth, Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Endeavour. Around him, officers worked quietly at their stations. The ship was on full alert, but there was no panic, no rushed movements. Just professional calm. Admiral, we're receiving reports from our listening posts, said Lieutenant Kate Foster, his communications officer. The Council fleet is mobilizing at their staging area near Varathis Prime. Numbers? 12,000 ships and counting. 17 different species contributing vessels. It's the largest armada they've assembled in 300 years. Morrison nodded calmly. And how long until they can move against us? Coordinating that many ships from different militaries? At least 2 weeks, possibly longer. They'll need time to establish command structures, coordinate supply lines, agree on battle plans. 2 weeks, Morrison repeated. A lot can happen in 2 weeks. Lieutenant Foster sent a message to all fleet commanders. Continue normal operations. I want merchant vessels flying their regular routes. I want patrol ships maintaining their usual schedules. Show the Council that we're not changing anything because of their threats. Sir, is that wise? If they see us as unprepared, they might attack sooner. Or they'll see it as confidence. They'll wonder why we're not scrambling to defend ourselves. They'll start imagining reasons why we might be so calm. Morrison smiled slightly. Fear is strongest when it lives in the imagination. Lieutenant, beneath the surface of Luna, Dr. Marcus Cole worked in his laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays showing data streams from across human space. Project Horizon was humming along perfectly. His assistant, Dr. Nina Park, entered the lab carrying a data pad. "We're picking up increased scanning activity from Council probes," she reported. "They're trying to survey our defenses." "Let them scan," Cole said, not looking up from his work. "They won't find what they're looking for, because Project Horizon is hiding it. Because they don't know what to look for. They're expecting traditional defenses, static platforms, orbital weapons, large fleet concentrations. They won't recognize what we've actually built." Nina moved closer to look at one of the displays. "The relay network is showing unusual activity in Sector 7. Cole pulled up the data. "That's not unusual activity. That's one of our relay stations doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's feeding false sensor data to a Council surveillance ship that wandered too close to human space." "What kind of false data?" "Interesting data. Data that will make them think twice. I'm showing them power readings that suggest we have weapon systems they've never seen before. Just enough to be detected, but not enough to be analyzed. Let them fill in the gaps with their own fears." Nina shook her head in amazement. "We're weaponizing uncertainty." "Exactly. And it's more effective than any actual weapon we could build. Because no matter how advanced their technology is, they can't defend against their own imagination." Back on Varathis Prime, the Council chamber had descended into argument. Zexthor stood at the center, his crystalline form radiating anger. 3 days, he shouted. "They've ignored us for 3 days. This is intolerable. We must act immediately." "Act how?" demanded Krell. "Attack a species that hasn't attacked us." "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that they defied a Council ultimatum." "They didn't defy it. They simply didn't acknowledge it." "There's a difference," Ambassador Yara spoke up. "I must point out that attacking humanity now would devastate our trade routes. Human merchants carry goods through 17 systems. If we go to war, the economic impact will affect every species in this chamber." "Money," Zexthor said with disgust. "You're worried about money while humans mock this Council's authority." "I'm worried about practical realities," Yara countered. "Something you seem to have forgotten in your anger." "Chancellor," Thane said carefully, "perhaps we should consider a more measured response. Send an envoy to speak with the humans. Find out why they chose silence." "We don't negotiate with species that ignore us," Zexthor declared. "Then what do you propose?" "We've issued an ultimatum. They've ignored it. Now we either attack or we look weak. Those are our only options, and you created this situation by issuing an ultimatum in the first place." The chamber erupted into shouting. Species that had stood united for thousands of years were suddenly at each other's throats, all because of one simple fact. Humanity had said nothing, and in that nothing, they had created everything. 5 days after the deadline, a Council probe finally managed to slip past human patrols and get close to Earth's orbital defenses. The data it collected was transmitted back to Varathis Prime immediately. When Council military analysts reviewed the data, they found something that made their blood run cold. The energy signatures didn't match anything in their databases. The defensive platform seemed to operate on principles they didn't recognize. And most troubling of all, the probe had been allowed to get that close. "They let us scan them," the head analyst reported to Zexthor. "They knew our probe was there. They could have destroyed it. Instead, they let it collect data. Why would they do that? Either they're incompetent, which seems unlikely given everything else we know about them, or they wanted us to see something specific. They're showing us their defenses, Chancellor. They want us to know they're ready." Zexthor stared at the data for a long time. "Or they're bluffing, perhaps. But are you willing to bet the Council fleet on that assumption?" That question hung in the air unanswered. On Earth, President Martinez received the report from their intelligence services. The Council had taken the bait. Dr. Cole's carefully crafted false readings had done exactly what they were supposed to do. Create doubt, breed uncertainty, make the Council question everything they thought they knew about humanity. "How long can we maintain this?" asked General Harris during their evening briefing. "As long as we need to," Martinez replied. "Every day that passes without us responding, every day that we continue normal operations while they panic and argue, is a day where the Council's unity weakens and our position strengthens. 2 weeks had passed since the ultimatum. The Galactic Council's armada remained at the edge of human space. A massive fleet of 12,000 warships representing 17 different species, but it hadn't moved forward. It hadn't attacked. It just waited, and humanity continued to say nothing. High Chancellor Zexthor stood alone in his private chambers on Varathis Prime, staring at reports that made less sense each day. Human colony ships were still departing on schedule. Trade convoys moved through established routes without deviation. Earth's orbital stations maintained normal operations. It was as if the ultimatum had never happened. His military advisor, General Vex, entered the chamber. "Chancellor, we have a problem." "Another one?" Zexthor's voice dripped with sarcasm. 3 more species have withdrawn ships from the armada. The Silicate Commune reduced their contribution by 40%. The Aquarian Federation recalled all their support vessels, and the Cloud Shepherds pulled out entirely. Zexthor slammed his fist against the wall, creating a sharp cracking sound as crystal met metal. "Cowards. All of them. They're not cowards, Chancellor. They're scared. Of the humans. The humans have done nothing." "Exactly. And that terrifies them more than any threat could. We don't know what the humans are planning. We don't know what weapons they might have. We don't know why they're so calm. And that uncertainty is destroying Council unity faster than any human weapon could." Zexthor turned to face his advisor. "What do our intelligence reports say?" "That's the strange part. Our spies in human space report that everything is completely normal. Too normal. There's no military buildup. No emergency meetings. No panic in the streets. It's as if they expected this exact situation and prepared for it years ago. Or they're better actors than we thought. Billions of people, all acting calm while facing potential extinction. That seems unlikely, Chancellor." Zexthor was silent for a long moment. "What about the probe we sent?" "The data is concerning. The energy signatures we detected don't match anything in our databases. Either the humans have developed completely new technology, or they're using old technology in ways we've never considered. Our analysts can't agree on which. Show me the data again." Vex pulled up holographic displays showing the probe's findings. Zexthor studied them carefully, his 4 eyes scanning every detail. Something about the data bothered him, but he couldn't identify what. "It's too convenient," he said finally. "What do you mean?" "The probe got exactly close enough to detect unusual readings, but not close enough to analyze them in detail. It's as if the humans wanted us to see just enough to worry, but not enough to understand." "You think they let the probe scan them deliberately?" "I think everything the humans have done since we issued the ultimatum has been deliberate, including their silence." On Earth, President Martinez met with her inner circle in a secure bunker deep beneath New Geneva. The mood was cautiously optimistic. "The Council's fleet is down to 8,000 ships," Admiral Morrison reported. "And dropping. Our intelligence suggests more species are considering withdrawal." "How long until the fleet becomes ineffective?" Martinez asked. "It's not about numbers, Madam President. It's about coordination. The Council fleet was always a collection of different militaries trying to work together. As species pull out, that coordination becomes harder. Trust breaks down. Communication suffers. Right now, I estimate they'd need at least a month to properly organize an attack. And that's if no more ships leave. Which they will," Dr. Cole added from his seat. "Project Horizon is feeding them contradictory information through multiple channels. Every day they receive intelligence that doesn't quite match previous reports. It's making them question everything." General Harris leaned forward. "Are we ready if they do attack?" Morrison nodded. "Our fleet is prepared. But more importantly, we've been running battle simulations against Council tactics for years. We know their strategies. We've studied their weaknesses. And frankly, their technology is impressive in scale but outdated in execution. Don't underestimate them," Martinez warned. 8,000 ships is still a formidable force. I'm not underestimating them. I'm just stating facts. Human ships are faster, more maneuverable, and equipped with weapon systems the Council hasn't seen before. In a straight fight, we'd take losses, but we'd win. "But we're not looking for a straight fight," Martinez reminded him. "We're looking to avoid war entirely. Ambassador Quinn, what's the mood on Varathis Prime?" Quinn, who had been monitoring Council communications through secure channels, pulled up her data. Chaos, to be honest. Zexthor is losing control. Multiple ambassadors are openly questioning his leadership. The Silicate Commune has proposed a vote of no confidence. The Aquarian Federation is calling for direct negotiations with humanity. They want to talk, Harris said. That's a good sign. Or a trap, Quinn countered. They might be trying to draw us into a conversation so they can claim we're willing to negotiate, which they could interpret as weakness. Which is why we continue saying nothing, Martinez decided. Let them fracture. Let them doubt. Let them imagine worst-case scenarios. Our silence is working better than any words could. Deep in his lunar laboratory, Dr. Cole worked on the final phase of Project Horizon. His assistant Nina watched as he made adjustments to the relay network. You're increasing the interference pattern, she observed. Just slightly. I want the Council's sensors to start picking up anomalies in their own fleet. Nothing major, just small inconsistencies that will make them question their own data. You're making them paranoid. I'm encouraging their natural paranoia. There's a difference. Every military force has internal tensions. Every alliance has cracks. I'm just widening those cracks a little. Nina shook her head in amazement. This is brilliant and terrifying at the same time. We're winning a war without firing a shot. We're not winning yet. We're just not losing. There's a difference. What happens if they figure out what we're doing? Cole paused in his work. Then we move to Plan B, which is, we stop hiding and show them exactly what we're capable of. But I'd prefer to avoid that. Revealing our capabilities ends the uncertainty, and uncertainty is our greatest weapon right now. Back on Varathus Prime, the council chamber was in session. Zexthor stood at the center trying to maintain order as ambassadors shouted at each other. We cannot wait any longer, Zexthor declared. Every day we hesitate makes us look weaker. And attacking without knowing what we're facing makes us look foolish, Krell shot back. Have you considered that perhaps the humans want us to attack? That maybe they're baiting us into a trap? That's paranoid speculation, is it? They've done nothing aggressive. They've made no threats. They've simply ignored us. And yet somehow we're the ones who look like aggressors now. How did that happen? Ambassador Yara stood. I propose we send an envoy to Earth. Not to negotiate, but to observe. Let's see for ourselves what the humans are doing. We don't send envoys to species that ignore council authority, Zexthor said coldly. Then what do you suggest? Thane asked quietly. Because right now, our options are attack blindly or continue waiting. Neither option is good. The chamber fell silent. Zexthor looked around at the assembled ambassadors and realized with growing horror that he had lost control of the situation. The council, which had governed the galaxy for 12,000 years through unity and strength, was fracturing because of one simple tactic, humanity's silence that evening. Zexthor received a private communication from Admiral Morrison of Earth's First Fleet. It was the first direct contact from humanity since the ultimatum. Zexthor stared at the message for a full minute before opening it. The message was brief. It contained no threats, no demands, no explanations. Just 3 sentences. Your fleet sits at our border. You wonder why we don't respond. Perhaps you should ask yourself why we don't need to. Zexthor read it 3 times. Each time the words seemed to carry more weight. The message wasn't a boast. It wasn't a threat. It was simply a statement of fact. And somehow that made it more frightening than any threat could have been. He called General Vex to his chambers. Get me everything we know about human military history. Every war they've fought, every battle they've won. I want to understand how they think. Vex returned an hour later with data files. Chancellor, you need to see this. The files showed humanity's history of warfare. Thousands of years of conflict. Species fighting amongst themselves with shocking brutality and innovation. Wars that lasted decades. Weapons that evolved from simple tools to devastating technology. But what struck Zexthor most was a pattern he saw repeated throughout human history. Whenever humans faced a superior force, they didn't surrender. They adapted. They innovated. They found ways to win that no one expected. They've been preparing for this their entire existence, he said quietly. Every war they fought on their own world was practice for fighting us. Should we recall the fleet? Vex asked. Zexthor didn't answer immediately. To recall the fleet would be to admit defeat without a battle. To attack would be to risk a war they might not win. And to continue waiting would be to watch Council authority crumble day by day. He was trapped, and humanity had built the trap with nothing more than silence and patience. "Send a message to the fleet commanders," he finally said. "Tell them to—" 1 month after the ultimatum, High Chancellor Zexthor made a decision that would change everything. He ordered a limited strike against a new human outpost in the Proxima sector, a system that both humans and the Council claimed as disputed territory. "It will be surgical," he told his military commanders. "A demonstration of Council power. We destroy one outpost, make our point, and force the humans to respond. Once they respond, we can negotiate from a position of strength." General Vex looked troubled. "Chancellor, are you certain this is wise? The humans have remained silent for a month. This could be the provocation that triggers full-scale war. A war we will win. 6,000 ships against whatever the humans can field. The odds are in our favor." "If you say so, Chancellor." Zexthor heard the doubt in Vex's voice but ignored it. He had to act. The Council was fracturing. His authority was crumbling. He needed a victory, even a small one, to restore confidence. A squadron of 12 Varathian battlecruisers entered the Proxima sector 3 days later. The human outpost was small, newly established, with minimal defenses. It should have been an easy target. As the Varathian ships approached, their sensors detected a single human vessel moving to intercept. A destroyer-class ship, the Defiant, commanded by Captain Jake Sullivan. Commander Thexval of the Varathian squadron opened a communication channel. "Human vessel, you are outmatched. Surrender immediately and we will allow you to evacuate your outpost." On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Sullivan looked at his crew. He was a young officer, only 35, but he had studied every word of the strategy President Martinez had outlined. He knew what he had to do. "Power down weapons," he ordered. His weapons officer looked shocked. "Captain? You heard me. Power down all weapon systems. Maintain shields but go defensive only. Sir, they have 12 battle cruisers. We can't fight them without weapons. We're not going to fight them. Communications, send them a data packet." Sullivan transmitted a simple file. It contained 3 pieces of information: Earth's exact coordinates, Admiral Morrison's personal contact frequency, and a single sentence: "Come find us if you want to talk." Then the Defiant went silent and held its position, weapons dark, sitting between the Varathian squadron and the outpost like a shield that refused to move. Commander Thexval stared at his screens in confusion. "What are they doing?" "They powered down their weapons, Commander," his tactical officer reported. "They're just sitting there. I can see that, but why?" Nobody had an answer. Thexval opened the channel again. "Human captain, you will move aside or we will destroy you." Sullivan's reply was calm, almost casual. "You'll have to make that choice yourself, Commander. We're not moving. We're not threatening you. We're just here. What you do next is entirely up to you." Thexval found himself in an impossible position. His orders were to destroy the outpost and engage any resistance. But the humans weren't resisting. They were just existing in his way, unarmed and vulnerable. If he attacked an unarmed ship, he would be committing what many species considered a war crime. The Council's moral authority, already shaky, would collapse completely. Every species that had doubts about this campaign would use it as justification to withdraw, but if he withdrew, he would prove that the Council was weak. That humanity could defy them without consequence. He contacted High Chancellor Zexthor directly. "Chancellor, we have a situation." When Zexthor heard the report, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear, not of human weapons, not of their fleet, but fear of their strategy. They had turned his surgical strike into a moral dilemma that had no good answer. "Destroy them," he ordered. "They're blocking Council forces. That's an act of aggression. Chancellor, their weapons are powered down. They're not even threatening us. If we fire on an unarmed vessel, every species in the Council will question our actions." Zexthor was silent for a long moment. Then he said the words he never thought he would say. "Withdraw. Return to the fleet. Sir? You heard me. Fall back. Now." The Varathian squadron turned away from the Proxima sector without firing a shot. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Sullivan watched them go. His hands were shaking slightly, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "All stations maintain alert status. Good work, everyone. We just won a battle without fighting. The recording of the incident spread through the galaxy within hours. Human news networks showed the footage. Council species saw it on their own broadcasts. And everywhere, people watched the same scene play out. A single human ship, weapons dark, sitting calmly in the face of overwhelming force. And a council squadron, the might of the galaxy's oldest alliance, turning away. The psychological impact was devastating. For the council, it was a humiliation. For humanity, it was validation of everything President Martinez had predicted. Within 24 hours, 8 more species recalled their ships from the council fleet. The Silicate Commune withdrew completely. The Meridian Alliance followed. The Cloud Shepherds, who had already pulled most of their forces, removed the rest. The Great Armada that had numbered 12,000 ships was now less than 4,000. And nearly all of them were Varathian. On Earth, President Martinez held an emergency meeting with her advisors. The mood was triumphant, but she kept them focused. "This changes everything," Admiral Morrison said. "The council fleet is fractured. This is our moment to press the advantage." "No," Martinez said firmly. "We don't press, we wait. Zexthor is wounded but still dangerous. If we push now, we give him something to rally the remaining forces against. We let the situation develop naturally. Captain Sullivan deserves recognition," General Harris said. "What he did took incredible courage. He'll get it. But privately, we don't celebrate victories yet. The game isn't over." Dr. Cole entered the room looking excited. "Madam President, you need to see this. Project Horizon just intercepted something remarkable." He pulled up a holographic display showing encrypted council communications. "These are internal messages between council ambassadors. They're turning on each other. The Silicate Commune is openly accusing Zexthor of incompetence. The Aquarian Federation is demanding an immediate end to hostilities. And several minor species are proposing something unprecedented." "What are they proposing?" Martinez asked. "They want to offer humanity a seat on the council. As equals, not as subjects." The room fell silent. Martinez sat back in her chair, processing this information. It was exactly what she had been working toward, but it was happening faster than she expected. "Who's leading this proposal?" she asked. "The Silicate Commune, surprisingly. Krell is arguing that the council needs new perspectives, that humanity has proven itself worthy of membership through strength and restraint." Ambassador Quinn leaned forward. "This could be genuine, or it could be a political move by Krell to undermine Zexthor's authority. Does it matter?" Morrison asked. "Either way, it serves our interests. It matters if we want a real partnership rather than a political game," Martinez said. "But Quinn is right. This could be our opening." Cole pulled up more data. "There's something else you should know. Project Horizon has been cataloging council military installations for years. We now have complete intelligence on their infrastructure. Supply depots, communication hubs, strategic resources, everything." "Show me." The holographic display filled with data points across dozens of star systems. Each point represented a critical council asset. Together, they formed a network that kept the council functioning. "If conflict became unavoidable," Cole explained, "we could strike at these locations simultaneously. It wouldn't destroy the council, but it would cripple their ability to coordinate military action for years." Martinez studied the display carefully. "This is what we needed. This is why we stayed silent, not because we were afraid, but because we were learning. Every day they waited, we gathered more information. Every day they hesitated, we became stronger." "Should we let them know we have this intelligence?" Harris asked. "Not directly. But Quinn, you can start letting certain information slip through your back channels. Just enough to make them realize that their secrets aren't as secret as they think." Quinn nodded. "I can do that. A comment here, a knowing look there. Let them connect the dots themselves. Perfect. The more they realize how exposed they are, the more they'll see negotiation as the only viable option." On Varathis Prime, High Chancellor Zexthor sat alone in his chambers, watching the recording of the Proxima Sector incident for the 100th time. Each viewing made him more certain of one inescapable truth. He had lost, not in battle, not through superior firepower, but through a strategy so subtle and effective that he had never seen it coming. Humanity had weaponized patience. They had turned silence into a shield and uncertainty into a sword. General Vex entered the chambers. "Chancellor, The Council has called an emergency session. They're voting on Krell's proposal to offer humanity membership. Let them vote. You're not going to oppose it? What would be the point? We've already lost the political battle. If I oppose the proposal and it passes anyway, I look weak. If I support it, I can at least claim to be forward-thinking rather than defeated. That's very pragmatic of you, Chancellor. I'm learning from the humans. They're very good teachers. Zexthor stood and prepared to face the Council one more time. As he... 6 weeks after the ultimatum that was supposed to bring humanity to its knees, Ambassador Lyra Quinn stood outside the great chamber of the Galactic Council, preparing to enter for the first time not as a supplicant, but as an equal. The vote had passed 3 days earlier. 28 species in favor, 12 opposed, 3 abstaining. Humanity was now officially a member of the Galactic Council, with full voting rights and representation. Quinn adjusted her formal diplomatic uniform and took a deep breath. Behind her, President Martinez had sent a simple message that morning. Remember, Lyra, you're not there to apologize. You're there to lead. The chamber doors opened. Quinn walked through them with her head high, her steps measured and confident. The representatives of 43 species, now 44 including humanity, watched her approach the newly installed seat reserved for Earth's ambassador. High Chancellor Zexthor stood at the center of the chamber. His crystalline form seemed dimmer than it had 6 weeks ago, as if the political defeat had literally taken the light out of him. Ambassador Quinn, he said, his voice carrying across the vast space. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome humanity to this assembly. Your species has proven itself worthy of membership through both strength and restraint. Quinn knew that every word was being carefully chosen for political purposes, but she also heard something else in Zexthor's tone. Respect, hard-earned and genuine. Thank you, High Chancellor, Quinn replied. Earth is honored to join this council and looks forward to contributing to galactic peace and prosperity. She took her seat. The chair felt solid beneath her, a physical representation of everything humanity had achieved through silence and patience. Krell of the Silicate Commune was the first to speak after the formal welcome. Ambassador Quinn, there is a question many of us have wanted to ask since this crisis began. Why did humanity choose silence? Quinn had known this question would come. President Martinez had prepared her response carefully. Because words can be twisted, Quinn said simply. If we had begged for mercy, it would have been seen as weakness. If we had threatened war, it would have been seen as aggression. But silence cannot be misinterpreted. It simply exists. And in that existence, we forced everyone, including ourselves, to examine their assumptions about power, authority, and respect. Ambassador Yara of the Aquarian Federation nodded slowly. It was a calculated risk. Everything is a calculated risk, Quinn responded. The question is whether the calculation is worth the outcome. We believed that maintaining our dignity and forcing a genuine dialogue was worth more than submitting to terms we didn't agree with. Thane of the Whisper Collective spoke up. Many of us feared your silence meant you were preparing for war, that you were buying time to arm yourselves. We were prepared for war if it came, Quinn admitted. But preparation and desire are two different things. We hoped our silence would create space for cooler heads to prevail. And it did. Zexthor remained standing at the center. I must ask, Ambassador, did you know we would eventually offer membership? Quinn met his 4 eyes directly. We hoped for it. We believed that if we demonstrated we would neither submit nor attack unprovoked, the Council would eventually recognize that partnership was more valuable than dominance. But no, Chancellor, we didn't know. We simply believed in the possibility. A dangerous gamble? Perhaps. But humanity has a saying, fortune favors the bold. On Earth, President Martinez watched the Council proceedings via live transmission. Her advisors sat around her equally absorbed in the historic moment. She's doing well, Admiral Morrison observed. Confident but not arrogant. Perfect tone. Lyra always had excellent diplomatic instincts, Martinez agreed. But the real test comes next. They're about to discuss the terms of our membership. On the screen, Zexthor was speaking again. There is the matter of your military forces. The Council has rules regarding fleet sizes and deployment. Quinn's response was immediate. Earth will maintain its current military posture. We will not reduce our fleet below levels we deem necessary for our security. However, we will agree to transparency protocols and joint exercises with Council forces to build trust. That's not how Council membership typically works. One of the minor ambassadors objected. Then perhaps it's time the Council adapted its rules, Quinn said calmly. We're joining as partners, not subjects. That means negotiation, not dictation. Krell surprised everyone by supporting her. The ambassador is correct. If we want humanity as a genuine partner, we must treat them as such from the beginning. I move that we accept Earth's proposal for transparency and joint operations in lieu of mandatory fleet reductions. The vote was close, but it passed. Martinez smiled. She's rewriting the rules in real time. Impressive. Dr. Cole entered the Situation Room. Madam President, now that we're Council members, should I begin shutting down Project Horizon? Martinez considered this carefully. Scale it back, but don't shut it down completely. Keep the defensive monitoring active. Remove the offensive interference capabilities. We're partners now, but we're not naive partners. What about the intelligence we gathered on Council installations? That stays classified. It's leverage we might need someday. But we don't use it unless absolutely necessary. General Harris looked concerned. Are we sure we can trust them? 6 weeks ago they were ready to destroy us. Trust is built over time, Martinez replied. Right now, we have mutual respect and mutual interest in stability. That's enough to start with. The trust will come later if we're patient. Admiral Morrison stood and addressed the room. I'd like to make a statement to the fleet. If that's acceptable, Madam President. Of course. What did you have in mind? Something for the history books. A message that explains what we accomplished and why it matters. Martinez nodded. Make it good, Jack. This moment deserves to be remembered. 2 hours later, Admiral Morrison's message was broadcast to every human ship, station, and settlement across 17 star systems. His words were simple but powerful, and they would be quoted for generations to come. To all personnel of Earth's defense forces. Today marks the end of a crisis and the beginning of a new chapter in human history. 6 weeks ago, the Galactic Council commanded us to beg for mercy. They demanded we submit, apologize, and reduce ourselves to their terms. We did none of those things. Not because we wanted war, not because we sought conflict, but because we understood a fundamental truth. Respect cannot be demanded. It cannot be given out of fear. It can only be earned through actions and character. So we stayed silent. We let our silence speak for us. We let our calm in the face of threats demonstrate our strength. We let our patience show our wisdom. And in doing so, we taught the galaxy something it had forgotten. True power is not measured by the words you say, but by the words you don't need to say. True strength is not shown through threats, but through the confidence to stand firm without threatening. And true leadership is not about forcing others to submit, but about earning their respect through your actions. Today, humanity takes its seat at the Galactic Council as an equal partner. We achieved this not through conquest, not through submission, but through something far more powerful. We achieved it by being true to ourselves and refusing to compromise our dignity for anyone's approval. You should all be proud. Every person who maintained their calm during this crisis, every officer who followed orders without panic, every civilian who continued their daily life with confidence, you all contributed to this victory. Because make no mistake, this was a victory, not over the Council, but over the idea that we needed their permission to be who we are. As we move forward into this new era, remember the lessons we learned. Patience is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. And sometimes the strongest action is choosing not to act until the time is right. Stay vigilant. Stay professional. Stay proud. You've earned it. The message ended, but its impact rippled through human space and beyond. Within days, it was being studied in military academies across the galaxy. Within weeks, it was required reading for diplomatic students of multiple species. On Varathus Prime, High Chancellor Zexthor read the transcript of Morrison's speech. He found himself nodding in agreement with points that 6 weeks earlier he would have dismissed as human arrogance. General Vex entered his chambers. Chancellor, the Council is requesting your presence. They want to discuss the future structure now that humanity is a member. Tell me honestly, Vex, do you think I handled this crisis well? Vex hesitated, then decided honesty was appropriate. No, Chancellor. You underestimated humanity. We all did. We thought in traditional terms of power and submission. They thought in terms of psychology and patience. Will I lose my position? Perhaps eventually. But not today. The Council needs stability right now, and you've shown you can adapt. That counts for something. Zexthor stood and prepared to face the Council once more. You know what the worst part is, Vex? They were right. Everything they did, every choice they made, it was the correct strategy. And I never saw it coming. Perhaps that's why they deserve their seat at the table. Chancellor, perhaps. 3 months after humanity joined the Council, Ambassador Quinn met privately with High Chancellor Zexthor in a small garden on Varathis Prime. It was an informal setting, chosen deliberately,